Ancient humans colonized every continent on Earth except Antarctica, using nothing but their own 2 feet and some genuinely audacious boats. They reached Pacific Islands separated from the nearest landmass by thousands of miles of open ocean. No compass, no map, no written record of how any of it was done. No GPS, no engine, no textbook explaining currents, weather, or the stars. Just accumulated human ingenuity, applied generation after generation, until our species had quietly spread across nearly the entire habitable surface of the planet. So how did they actually pull it off? Let's start with the most basic, almost embarrassingly simple driver behind all of it. Food. Hunter-gatherer populations weren't chasing new horizons for the thrill of it. They were following migrating herds, tracking seasonal plants, and moving away from land that had been picked clean. That created something researchers call slow generational drift. One group might move only a modest distance in a single lifetime, but compound that across thousands of generations, and modest movement becomes staggering distance. This is the detail most people get wrong. Nobody walked from Africa to Australia in one heroic lifetime. It looked more like a slow ripple, each generation pushing the boundary a little further, chasing better hunting grounds, more reliable water, or simply more room as the old territory filled up. We touched on persistence hunting in a previous video, and the exact same physiology applies here. Efficient sweating, upright bipedal walking, a body tuned for sustained, moderate-intensity effort over long stretches of time. Studies on contemporary walking-based societies found that covering 10 to 20 miles a day on foot, carrying supplies, wasn't an athletic feat. For a body conditioned to it from childhood, it was just Tuesday. But a strong body alone doesn't get you across a continent without getting lost, dying of thirst, or walking into something that kills you. That takes a different kind of skill entirely. Surviving unfamiliar terrain required an enormous accumulated body of environmental knowledge, reading the landscape, spotting water by the plants growing near it, or the animals gathered around it, recognizing seasonal weather specific to a region. None of this was figured out by one person on one trip. It was generations of observation, passed down orally, letting ancient travelers move through unknown territory with more confidence than a modern person, dropped into the same place with zero preparation, would ever manage. That knowledge is what turned a walk into a migration. Now let's talk about the routes. Because sometimes the environment itself handed ancient humans a shortcut. Genetic and archaeological evidence points to early Homo sapiens leaving Africa through specific corridors, including a crossing at the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, linking the Horn of Africa to the Arabian Peninsula. During Ice Age sea level drops, that strait was considerably narrower than it is today. That's the pattern worth remembering. Ancient migration wasn't pure willpower. It was also about timing, narrower crossings, exposed land bridges, windows that simply don't exist under today's climate. Nowhere is that clearer than what happened next, on the other side of the planet. During the last glacial period, so much of the planet's water was locked into ice sheets that sea levels dropped and exposed a wide land connection between Siberia and Alaska, a region researchers call Beringia. No boats, no sophisticated crossing technology, just following game animals east, across what was, at the time, perfectly ordinary walkable ground. That single strip of exposed land explains how humans populated an entire hemisphere that today would require serious maritime technology to reach at all. It wasn't a miracle crossing. It was a shortcut, on loan from the climate that no longer exists. Not every migration got a shortcut, though. Some had to build their way across open water, and one of them still doesn't fully make sense. Even at the lowest sea levels of the Ice Age, reaching Australia from Southeast Asia meant crossing a stretch of open water that was never fully exposed as land. And yet the evidence says humans got there at least 65,000 years ago. Using some kind of deliberate watercraft, tens of thousands of years before the more famous Pacific voyaging we're about to cover, and with presumably far less refined boat technology. What exactly they built and how they planned it is still an actively debated mystery in archaeology. But the fact itself isn't in doubt. Humans were experimenting with open water crossings far earlier than popular history usually gives them credit for. Which brings us to the voyagers who turned that kind of crossing into a science. Polynesian voyagers colonized a vast range of remote Pacific islands using double-hulled canoes big enough to carry a founding population, along with the plants and animals needed to actually build a life once they landed. This wasn't drifting. The deliberate presence of breeding plants and animals on board is the tell. These were planned colonization voyages, undertaken by people who expected to find land. Their navigation system was built from star patterns, ocean swell direction, cloud formations, and even the flight paths of specific seabird species known to nest on particular islands, all held in an internal mental map, passed down through direct apprenticeship, no charts required. Some navigators could reportedly detect an island they couldn't yet see, just from how it disrupted the swell pattern around it. A level of environmental sensitivity modern researchers still struggle to fully replicate. And Polynesian canoes were just one regional answer to a much bigger question: what do you build a boat out of when every environment gives you different materials? Reed boats in the Mediterranean and South America. Dugout canoes carved from single tree trunks across river and coastal cultures worldwide. Skin-covered frame boats in the Arctic, where wood was scarce but hide and bone weren't. No single invention spread from one origin point. It was countless independent solutions, each one built for the specific water, materials, and needs of its own patch of the planet. Boats solved water. But on land, there was still a hard ceiling on how much one person could carry, until humans stopped carrying everything themselves. Horses, donkeys, camels, llamas, domesticated pack animals didn't just add convenience. They rewrote the math on how far and how fast people could move goods and supplies. Camels deserve special mention here. They can go far longer without water than most large mammals, tolerate extreme heat, and once paired with proper saddle technology, turned the Sahara, the Arabian Peninsula, and Central Asia from barriers into trade corridors. And once goods could move that far, something else started moving with them: connection. On a scale most people don't expect from the ancient world. Archaeologists keep finding stone, shell, and raw materials hundreds or even thousands of miles from where they actually came from. Proof that trade networks connected communities long before anything resembling modern transport existed. Rivers made this possible on a massive scale. The Nile, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Indus, these weren't just the backdrop to famous ancient civilizations. They were highways, letting people, goods, and ideas move farther with far less effort than walking the same distance overland. And where the terrain turned hostile, Arctic cold, desert drought, humans didn't avoid it, they engineered around it. Sled technology paired with dogs bred specifically for pulling in the north, treated animal skins, shaped gourds, and evaporation-resistant ceramic vessels for carrying water across the desert, alongside generations of memorized knowledge about exactly where the next water source was. That knowledge, not raw endurance, was usually the real difference between a journey that succeeded and one that didn't. None of this required a single genius or a single invention. It required countless small pieces of practical knowledge: which plants mean water is close, how to read an approaching storm in the clouds, how to build a hull that survives open ocean swell, tested, refined, and handed down generation after generation. And today, genetic research is helping confirm it. Tracing mutation markers across modern populations worldwide lets researchers reconstruct migration routes and timing with a precision that archaeology alone often can't reach, since physical remains frequently don't survive the time spans involved. In several documented cases, that genetic evidence has confirmed and sharpened timelines archaeology could only estimate roughly. It's also worth being honest. This wasn't a smooth story. Long-distance travel carried real risk of starvation, dehydration, disease, conflict, and simple fatal misjudgment. The successful migrations are the ones that left evidence behind, which means a considerable number of attempts almost certainly failed and vanished with them. So how did ancient humans actually travel so far? Not one invention, not one heroic journey. A combination. Slow, generational drift toward resources rather than single epic crossings. A body built for sustained walking. An enormous, inherited library of environmental knowledge. Climate-driven shortcuts, land bridges, and narrow straits, taken while they lasted. Independently invented boat technology sophisticated enough to find islands nobody could see yet. Domesticated animals that rewrote how far a group could carry itself. And trade networks proving ancient communities were more connected, earlier, than we usually give them credit for. Maybe the most impressive part of this whole story is how ordinary the ingredients were. No single brilliant invention, no single heroic journey, just patient, accumulated knowledge, generation after generation walking a little further or sailing a little further out than the one before it.